Hello and welcome. My name is Deatra M. Green. I'm with Class 2271 working with young children with special needs and their families. My instructor is Dorothy Koffler. Our topic is administering inclusionary practice for Down syndrome students. This is more or less a village-like concept, and that's my reason for the title on the page. We are all wonderfully made. A special focus on Down syndrome inclusion. I chose an inspirational quote to start this presentation, and it reads, "The essence of creativity is to be able to disassemble and recombine elements in new ways," by Adele Diamond, one of the researchers that of The Mind in the Making by Ellen Galinsky. Now, what we want to understand is that most oftentimes, of course, in an inclusionary environment, in different cultures coming together, different educators coming together, different parents, a community of people coming together. We are usually have very many different perspectives, and the best way to combine our elements is to come together, discuss, share, and listen to each other. This is my reason for choosing that quote, because it represents taking something that's diverse and different and making it all inclusive by coming together. I thought it would be a great idea to start with the definition of early childhood inclusion. And it begins with early childhood inclusion embodies the values, policies, and practices that support the right of every infant and young child and his or her family, regardless of ability, to participate in a broad range of activities and contexts as full members of families, communities, and society. The desired results of inclusive experiences for children with and without disabilities and their families include a sense of belonging and membership, positive social relationships and friendships, and development and learning to reach their full potential. The defining features of inclusion that can be used to identify high-quality early childhood programs and services are access, participation, and supports. Now, the reason I read that entire definition is because it really is comprehensive in our understanding of inclusion. And it is important to understand this definition. Of course, we can truncate it in many ways, but I thought we would start it out with just understanding the full scope of inclusion. Before I started my journey in the field of early childhood education, I was taken aback by the information I received regarding inclusive education. I didn't realize that after so many years ago when I was in school, that instead of programs being separate, children being in separate programs based on their unique ability, uh, I was shocked really to find that there's a such thing as including children. And I always thought from the beginning that inclusivity should have always been the approach. So I'm very happy to know that now we have a mainstream approach of inclusive education. And it's better that way when children can come together with, I call it, unique abilities, because we're all different and we're all able to do certain things. We may not be able to do things according to standard, but nevertheless, we all are uniquely able. Um, and I think when families, parents, uh, and families in total can communicate and collaborate with the school teachers and other support personnel, and make decisions or collaborate to make things profitable and accessible for young children with unique abilities, typical or atypical, I think the inclusive education is the best approach. Now that we understand the or have an idea of inclusion as an approach to education, we're going to deal with the specific focus, which is understanding Down syndrome, because the program we want for our children here at this location is accommodations for including Down syndrome. Now, what about Down syndrome? What exactly is going on in the life of a Down syndrome student? We are normally, as human beings, are born with 23 pairs of chromosomes. Those 46 chromosomes are strands of DNA encoded with genes inherent in each cell. The genetic material is transferred from parent to child and are responsible for the instructions for the unique offspring while still maintaining traits of the parent. A student with Down syndrome has a total of 47 chromosomes, which is usually referred to as trisomy 21. Now, before we're able to actually work with our Down syndrome students, that's very important for us to understand the characteristics of physical, their physical and health. Okay? And these are some of the characteristics we want to be mindful of, that they have a small round head, flattened in the back, flat mid-face profile, skin fold curvature at the inner eye corners. They have small ears. You may notice a short stature, short fingers with little fingers curving inward, a simian crease on the palms of one or both hands. 50% have congenital defects. There's heart and intestinal abnormalities, often life-threatening. There's hearing impairments from frequent ear infections. And then there's cognitive delays. We want to refrain from saying mild to severe, and that's why I put that there, just to keep that in as a reminder. Also, they're susceptible to getting leukemia, have autoimmune diseases, frequent infections, and eventually later in life may develop Alzheimer's. Just as we've reviewed the characteristics of physical and health, it's also important to be aware of the possible behaviors. All of these combined will help us as instructors and or educators in general to better approach with best practices in educating Down syndrome students. So with this next slide, behavior issues are most common in children with Down syndrome. It is said that 1 in 3 children with Down syndrome have serious behavioral dispositions. Some common ones are the following. Very simply, there's controlling impulses, communicating, relating to other children and adults, and managing frustration. Sometimes those things are very, very noticeable. I remember when my mother used to work with Down syndrome students, and that was many, many, many decades ago, of course, when she would take me to school with her. And I believe that that was where I first noticed Down syndrome students and all the characteristics that we just discussed. And most of these behaviors I was able to see like right away. They're very, very prominent, noticeable. And so when we have a handle on understanding these behaviors, we will better be able to approach them. While we have our ability to communicate and we understand how to communicate each other in the educational field, I thought it would be wise and imperative to go over some of the myths that occur frequently in the field of education. Of course, you have much research, new findings, new practices, but like myself, who's coming in and haven't been on the educational scene in a long time, I'm not realizing that many terminologies are no longer used, and they want us to refrain from using certain terminologies. And also, there's so many myths and rumors that have surfaced and have lingered over the years. And so I thought it would be a great idea to point out some of the myths that are still around today. And they are concerning Down syndrome. Only older parents have children with Down syndrome. People who have Down syndrome die young. Uh, they cannot walk or play sports. They all look alike. They don't feel pain. They have no memory. They will develop, well, they say that all Down syndrome people will develop Alzheimer's. And I don't think that's all. It may be few that some of our biochemical researchers have discovered that actually does occur, but it's not all. There's also the saying or the myth says that they can't read or write, and that they cannot walk or play sports, and that they can't go to regular public schools. And we know that for sure, with our inclusionary practices in place, our best practices, and our wonderful professionals in early childhood education, we know that definitely that is not, none of these are true, and that there are very successful people with Down syndrome who are doing great, amazing things for our society. Now, I labeled this next slide as the collective review of students, family, families, and community. And it's very important that before we begin the school year with our new Down syndrome students in our inclusive program structures, we want to make sure that everything is crossed with a T and dotted with an I. We want to make sure that we're complete in understanding each other and understanding where everyone is within the structures, knowing everyone's responsibilities, and the fact that we all understand what the expectations are when it comes to educating Down syndrome children, as well as the other typical students combined in the classroom. So the points that we want to make sure that we address, we're going to explore the beliefs and value systems, experiences and outcomes, review students' developmental profiles. We need to discuss the educational goals and expected outcomes. We need to review the best practices for inclusion with specifics for Down syndrome students. We're going to discuss the blueprint for interactions with families and community, the school administration's role in maintaining the inclusionary program should be very clear, and establishing and impressing uniqueness. We go back to the quote that I originally mentioned about disassembling and recombining, which leads to creativity. I believe that within an inclusionary structured program, it allows you so much innovation and so much creativity to where when a teacher can identify a situation, a challenge, or not even just the teacher, it can be another student can inform the teacher of something that can assist the situation of the educational environment or anyone within the educational structure of the school program, the family, or anyone from the community. The bottom line is when we come together, we put all these items in place and we're able to collectively have an idea of the needs that would need to be met for the collective environment and the students. Now we are getting into some of the more exciting stuff, which is the classroom, our learning environment. And here we're going to be implementing inclusive instruction and environments, because we know that this is where the learning happens, this is where the action happens, and this is where we can employ our creativity and our innovation and collaboration. Let's start with establishing an accessible learning environment is pretty much what we're starting with here. We're going to provide a variety of ways to engage with materials and to express themselves is what they are going to be doing. And we're going to provide appropriate adaptations for a social and emotional environment. This is going to be a very busy place and very diverse actions and activities going on. You're establishing teaching methods and learning goals. And we're going to use that UDL, which is the Universal Design for the Classroom environments, to include teaching method and learning goals. You have using adaptive technologies. There's so many different technologies that we can use to help the children, expeditiously to train themselves and to grasp certain concepts. There will be teaching timetables and routines and school rules to all of our children. Use clear language and short sentences. We're going to use appropriate and unambiguous facial expressions. Allow adequate time for the students to process language and respond. Now, these latter entities, of course, are definitely for the Down syndrome students in particular, but all-inclusive, the other typical developing students can benefit from all of these items as well. Communication is the most important thing. Without communication, we would not be here. We would not be conducting this slide presentation. We probably wouldn't even have a school program. So now we're getting into the communication, classroom goals for communication, okay? And we have students may stutter when stressed, increase comfort level of a classroom, one-to-one instruction for articulation skills, audiologists for hearing tests, occupational therapists to work on posture control required for speech therapists to design program for remediation. Because of difference in receptive and expressive language, intelligence often is underestimated, and we want to recognize situational factors that can impact communication and classroom performance. These items are so important for communication with our students, especially our Down syndrome students, because these are unique things that actually will assist them. For instance, like the occupational therapist to work on posture control, which is required for their speech. Okay, and all the other things we just discussed. We must make sure these things are met so that it will take away the hindrances of communication. Once the communication goals are met and things are more clearer and approaches on communication are more sound, then we will have better communication. And better communication just fosters a better functioning of a program. Okay, let's discuss some teacher strategies just to reinforce some items regarding our students. How the children learn, Down syndrome children learn at a slower pace. And they are literal learners, so we want to refrain from using diverse term meaning and avoid slang. They usually have short-term memory. So we need to delineate directions precisely and in smaller steps. We want to determine what skills are lacking. We want to remove barriers and respond to needs. And we want to help students to succeed in classroom participation and communication goals for participation support. These are very basic strategies, and it is my firm belief that if we are able to accomplish these strategies, it truly, truly will make the educational processes for the entire inclusionary classroom a success. Our Down syndrome students will feel naturally included and they will participate, and all of the minor adjustments or challenges as teachers, you will be able to know how to adjust right away. Sometimes there are extra supports and accommodations that can be of great assistance and help really smooth things over in the classroom, especially for the Down syndrome student. Let's begin with the multisensory activities and materials. Moving on to the opportunities with self-help skills, where they're using buttons and zippers. You want to allow more time for them to learn, allow more practice for them to apply the knowledge. We want to make sure we are aware of noise levels in and around the classroom. Maybe you have headphones to support that. Teach appropriate social boundaries, and notice that it's good to have the adaptations sort of like in a subtle and not so much in a pronounced way to bring attention to the Down syndrome students. And you want to also have the visual schedules there in place as well. And you kind of like want to let it blend in a way where the other typical children will be able to use them as well. And that way it will also be considered like a subtle adaptation, which is what we want to aim for. Okay, the particular article that's very important to kicking off this entire process is associated with our IEP and IFSP, which is the important tool that establishes and describes the processes that would occur with our Down syndrome students, as well as our typical students. The collective information is in this particular item. And now an IEP IFSP is an educational plan which is designed to encourage parents and school personnel to work together in describing the child's unique needs and services which will be provided to meet those educational needs. It is a great tool to involve the parents and professional interdisciplinary team to offer support, such as like the parent, the school psychologist, the teacher, the speech pathologist, the occupational specialist, and there may be others that would be involved depending on what the needs are. And that pretty much sums up all of what we need to make this inclusionary structured environment for Down syndrome students. Now, there will be a video or two in the next slide for your perusal. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that it was clear enough for you to understand. I also hope that we were able to address all of the things that we need to make this inclusionary program a success. Thank you.
We are all born from a cell. It's a part of your body, very, very teeny tiny. You can only see it through a microscope. Inside the tiny cells live the chromosomes, which are even smaller. Chromosomes are responsible for our features, like our eye color, hair type, whether we will be a boy or a girl, all the things we are born with, and we cannot change. In total, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad. But sometimes there's one extra chromosome. Then the baby is born with 47 chromosomes. This condition is called Down syndrome. Doctors don't know why it happens. It's just like that, and it cannot be changed. In the world, more than 3,000 babies are born with Down syndrome every year, and just like you, are part of a family, have siblings, parents, uncles, aunts, and grandparents, and they can do the same as you. They go to school, to parties, to the park, they play sports, and they have friends. And when they grow up, they can also have a job, a family, and they can live a very happy life, just like you. Down syndrome is not a disease. It's something you're born with. You cannot choose to have Down syndrome or not, just like you cannot choose your eye color or your hair type. People with Down syndrome are the same as the rest of us. The only difference is that they need more of our help. But why? Because sometimes people with Down syndrome could have a hard time speaking or listening well. That's why some children need extra help at school. If you have a friend with Down syndrome, be kind and help him. For example, when you talk to him, look him in the eyes and give him time to answer. Don't call him names. Be his friend. Treat him with respect and motivate him to do things on his own. Don't forget, people with Down syndrome learn slowly, but they can do the same as you. Help your friend with Down syndrome and set the example for everyone else. If you don't know how, ask your teacher or a grown-up. And remember, we all need help from time to time.